The tickets slipped from my trembling hand onto the table. 2 names. Jennifer Thompson and Mark Davis. Flight 207 to Cancun, leaving Friday morning. I barely heard the front door open, my pulse roaring in my ears. Jennifer walked in, her smile faltering the moment her eyes landed on the tickets. "Kevin!" Her voice cracked, the color draining from her face. I stood, holding the evidence between us. "What the hell is this, Jennifer?" "But let me tell you from the beginning. Jennifer and I were the couple everyone envied. The couple who never fought, who always held hands at dinner parties, who had the perfect smiles in every photo. At least, that's what it looked like from the outside. Behind closed doors, though, things weren't as seamless as they seemed. We'd been married for 8 years, and for most of them, I thought we were solid. Sure, there were minor disagreements, moments when the spark felt dimmer, but nothing unusual for a marriage. I figured every relationship had its seasons, times when the grass wasn't as green, but you worked through it. That's what commitment was, right? Jennifer was beautiful in that effortless way that made heads turn when she walked into a room. Her honey blonde hair always perfectly styled, her laughter the kind that made you feel like you were the funniest person in the world. She was my world. Or at least, I thought I was hers. Things began to shift about 6 months ago. It was subtle at first, little things that were easy to shrug off. She'd spend an extra 10 minutes getting ready, brushing it off as needing a little self-care. Her phone became a permanent fixture in her hand, always angled away from me. If I joked about it, she'd roll her eyes and say, "Kevin, not everything's a conspiracy." I wanted to believe her. I really did. But then there were the late nights. At first, they were once or twice a month. A work meeting ran late, or she was out with her friends. "Don't wait up," she'd text, adding a heart emoji for good measure. Then it became once or twice a week. When I asked her about it, she'd sigh and say something about how her job was demanding, how she needed to network more to stay competitive. I didn't push because I didn't want to be that husband, the paranoid one who suffocates his wife with suspicion. Still, the doubts started creeping in. The first real red flag came one Saturday morning. She was in the shower, and her phone buzzed on the nightstand. I wasn't snooping, I swear I wasn't. But the screen lit up, and there it was, a message from someone named Mark. Looking forward to Friday winking face. I felt my stomach drop, but before I could process it, she came out of the bathroom, her hair wrapped in a towel. She saw the look on my face and asked what was wrong. I shook my head and muttered something about work stress. I didn't want to accuse her without proof. What kind of man jumps to conclusions over a single text? But after that, the nagging feeling wouldn't go away. Jennifer's behavior continued to change. She started dressing differently, sexier, more deliberate. She swapped out her cozy cardigans for low-cut tops, traded her flats for heels. She said it was part of feeling empowered. But I couldn't help but wonder who she was trying to impress. Our conversations became surface level, all about schedules and grocery lists, with none of the warmth we used to share. When I tried to bring it up, she'd brush it off, telling me I was overthinking. "Not everything is a big deal, Kevin," she'd say, her tone sharp enough to cut. Maybe I was overthinking. Maybe I was projecting my own insecurities onto her. I tried to tell myself that. I tried to focus on the good moments, the nights we curled up on the couch watching movies, the occasional date nights that felt almost normal. But those moments were fewer and farther between, like fleeting glimpses of a life that no longer existed. The final straw came when she planned a girls' trip. Or so she said. It was last minute, something about needing to recharge, with her best friend, Mia. She didn't give me much notice. Just told me she'd be gone for the weekend and that I should enjoy some me time. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But something about the way she said it, too casual, too rehearsed, made my skin crawl. I didn't know it yet, but that trip would be the catalyst for everything to unravel. Looking back, I should have trusted my instincts sooner. But hindsight is always 20/20, isn't it? At the time, I still held on to the hope that I was wrong. That Jennifer was the woman I'd fallen in love with, that we could fix whatever was broken. If only I'd known just how broken it already was. It all started with a laundry basket. Funny how something so mundane could crack open the carefully constructed facade of my marriage. Jennifer had been rushing out the door for another one of her work meetings, leaving behind a pile of clothes she'd promised to wash. I didn't think much of it. I grabbed the basket, tossed the clothes into the machine, and reached for her tote bag on the floor to clear the space. The bag was heavier than usual. Curiosity got the better of me. As I opened it to pull out the obvious culprits, a few notebooks, her laptop, maybe some cosmetics, I found something I hadn't expected, a slim folder tucked at the bottom. Inside were 2 airplane tickets, crisp and damning. Cancun. Departure date, Friday. 2 names stared back at me, Jennifer Thompson and Mark Davis. My hands froze, the room spinning as the weight of it all sank in. The same Mark who'd texted her weeks ago. The same Mark she'd insisted was a colleague, who occasionally sent her messages about work. The air felt thick, like I couldn't breathe. My first instinct was denial. This had to be a mistake. Maybe this was work-related, or maybe Jennifer had booked the tickets for someone else. But deep down, I knew better. I spent the next hour in a daze, pacing the living room and running my fingers through my hair. My brain screamed for proof. Anything that would confirm or refute the nightmare playing out in my head. Jennifer's laptop was on the kitchen counter. I hesitated, guilt pooling in my stomach, but I opened it anyway. Her passwords were saved, and within seconds, I was staring at her email. There it was, plain as day, a chain of messages between her and Mark. Each one was more damning than the last. "Can't wait to see you again," he wrote in one. "Friday can't come soon enough." Her reply? "I'll be counting the minutes, Redheart." The messages were sprinkled with plans for their trip, details about hotel rooms, restaurants, even excursions. My heart sank further with every word. But the final nail in the coffin was a photo attachment in one of the emails. It was a selfie of the 2 of them, taken at some restaurant I didn't recognize. Her smile in the picture was radiant, the kind she hadn't given me in months. I slammed the laptop shut, the sound echoing in the empty house. For a moment I stood there, numb. My world had just crumbled around me, and I didn't know what to do. My first thought was to confront her immediately, to demand answers. But she wasn't home, and I needed time to think. I scoured every corner of the house that afternoon, driven by a desperate need to know how far this had gone. I checked her nightstand, the closet, even the bathroom drawers. In the end, I found a second phone hidden in a shoebox on the top shelf of our closet. The phone was locked, but it didn't take long to guess her passcode, our anniversary. Ironic, really. The texts on the second phone were worse than I'd imagined. They weren't just planning a trip, they were sharing intimate details, secrets, inside jokes. She had a whole separate life with this man, one she'd carefully kept hidden from me. I sat on the edge of the bed, the phone in one hand and the plane tickets in the other, the evidence laid out in front of me like pieces of a grotesque puzzle. At that moment, I couldn't decide what hurt more, the betrayal itself or the sheer effort she'd put into deceiving me. By the time Jennifer got home that evening, I had my game face on. I didn't say anything about the tickets or the messages. Instead, I watched her, every smile, every laugh, every word dripping with falseness. "Long day?" I asked casually as she kicked off her heels and collapsed onto the couch. "Exhausting," she sighed. "I just want to shower and sleep." I nodded, swallowing the bile rising in my throat. That night I barely slept. I lay in bed beside her, my mind racing. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her smiling at Mark, whispering the same sweet nothings she used to say to me. By morning, my course of action was clear. I wasn't going to let this slide. But before I confronted her, I needed to be absolutely sure of my next steps. I called her supposed best friend, Mia, under the guise of wanting to plan a surprise for Jennifer. "About her girls' trip this weekend," I began, my voice steady. "Any idea what she might need?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Girls' trip?" Mia asked, her confusion unmistakable. Jennifer didn't tell me about any trip. I clenched the phone tighter, my suspicions confirmed. Later that day, while Jennifer was out, I went to the bank and pulled up our joint account. Sure enough, there were transactions I didn't recognize, dinners at upscale restaurants, lingerie stores, and a deposit for a hotel in Cancun. By the time she walked through the door that evening, I was ready. My heart was pounding, my hands trembling, but I'd pieced together enough of the puzzle to know the truth. I waited until she set down her purse and slipped off her jacket. "Hey, Jennifer," I said, my voice steady. She turned, smiling like nothing was wrong. "Yeah?" I pulled the tickets from my pocket, holding them up between us. "Care to explain this?" Her face paled, the color draining in an instant. "Kevin, But I wasn't about to let her spin another lie. Not this time. Her eyes darted from the tickets in my hand to my face, a flicker of panic crossing her expression. She opened her mouth, but no words came out, just a sharp intake of breath, as if she'd been caught in an ambush. "Go ahead, Jennifer," I said, my voice low and measured. "Explain it. I'm all ears." She reached for the tickets as if touching them would somehow soften their existence. I pulled them back, unwilling to let her reclaim control. Her hesitation was telling. She wasn't searching for the truth, she was crafting a story. "Kevin," she started, her voice trembling. It's not what it looks like." I raised an eyebrow. "Oh, it's not? So you're not flying to Cancun with Mark Davis on Friday?" I tapped the tickets for emphasis. "Because that's exactly what it looks like." She took a step back, crossing her arms defensively. It's work-related." "Work-related?" I barked out a laugh, the kind that escapes when disbelief boils over into hysteria. "Jennifer, I read the emails. I saw the texts. I found your second phone." Her face crumpled, but she recovered quickly, adopting a defiant tone. "You went through my things? That's such an invasion of privacy, Kevin! How could you? How could I?" I snapped, cutting her off. "How could you, Jennifer? How could you lie to my face, sneak around behind my back, and make me feel like a damn fool while you carry on with him?" Her mouth opened, but again, no sound came out. She looked cornered, like a deer caught in headlights. "I trusted you," I said, my voice breaking. "I loved you. And this is how you repay me?" She finally spoke, her tone shifting to one of pleading. "Kevin, I never meant for this to happen. It got out of control." "Out of control?" I scoffed. "You're planning romantic getaways, exchanging God knows what kind of messages, and hiding a whole other phone. This wasn't a mistake, Jennifer. This was a choice, a series of choices. Don't insult me by pretending otherwise." Her eyes glistened with tears, and for a brief moment, I felt a pang of guilt. But then I remembered the messages, the lies, the betrayal, and my resolve hardened. She sank onto the couch, burying her face in her hands. "I was unhappy," she whispered, her voice muffled. The room fell silent, her words hanging in the air like a toxic cloud. I wanted to laugh at the absurdity of it all. Unhappy? She had never mentioned being unhappy. She never gave me a chance to fix things, to address whatever was wrong. Instead, she had run straight into someone else's arms. "Unhappy?" I echoed, my tone dripping with bitterness. "And instead of talking to me, you decided to cheat? To blow up our life? To destroy us?" "I didn't mean to hurt you," she said, her voice trembling. "Didn't mean to hurt me?" I repeated, incredulous. "Jennifer, every single thing you did was a deliberate choice. Don't act like this just happened to you. You chose to lie. You chose to cheat. You chose to throw everything we built away." She looked up at me, her face streaked with tears. "I didn't know how to talk to you anymore, Kevin. You were always so busy, so distant." I flinched at her words. Busy? Distant? Was that really how she saw me? I worked long hours to provide for us, to give us the life she said she wanted. And now, she was using that against me? "That's not an excuse," I said firmly. If you felt neglected, you should have said something. We could have worked on it, together. But instead, you went behind my back. She stared at me, her expression a mixture of guilt and defiance. I didn't plan for this to happen with Mark. We connected. He made me feel seen, Kevin. I recoiled as if she'd struck me. Seen? I repeated, my voice rising. You mean to tell me that all those years, all the effort I put into this marriage, none of that made you feel seen? She hesitated, her silence confirming the truth I already knew. The anger inside me boiled over. You know what, Jennifer? Spare me the excuses. Just tell me the truth. How long has this been going on? She hesitated, her gaze fixed on the floor. 6 months, she finally admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. 6 months. Half a year of lies, of pretending everything was fine while she carried on with another man. I sank into the chair across from her, the weight of her confession hitting me like a freight train. My mind raced with questions I didn't want answers to. How often had they met? What had they done? How many moments of my life had been a lie? Did you ever love me? I asked, my voice barely audible. Her head snapped up, her eyes wide. Of course I did. I still do. I shook my head, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. You don't cheat on someone you love, Jennifer. You don't humiliate them, betray them, and lie to their face every single day. Tears streamed down her face, but I felt no sympathy. Not anymore. Kevin, I'll end it. I'll cut him off. We can fix this, she said, her tone desperate. Fix this? I repeated, shaking my head. Do you honestly think there's anything left to fix? You destroyed us the moment you chose him over me. She reached for my hand, but I pulled away, her touch burning like fire. I need time, I said, standing up. Time to figure out what the hell I'm supposed to do now. Kevin, please, she begged, but I was already walking toward the door. I paused, turning back to her one last time. You should think long and hard about what you've done, Jennifer. Because there's no coming back from this. And with that I left, slamming the door behind me. I drove aimlessly for hours that night, the city lights blurring into streaks of yellow and white as my mind replayed the confrontation. Her face when I held up those tickets. The weak excuses. The lies that had spilled from her lips, even when the truth was laid bare. My emotions hit me in waves, each one stronger than the last. The first was anger, white-hot and all-consuming. I gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white, replaying every moment of deceit. How many times had she kissed me goodbye only to rush into his arms? How many nights had she laid beside me, texting him under the covers? But anger gave way to sadness, the kind that hollowed out my chest and left me gasping for air. I pulled over to the side of the road, tears streaming down my face as I struggled to process what had just happened. This wasn't just about the affair. It was about the life we'd built together, the memories, the plans, the promises, and how easily she'd shattered them. I thought about our wedding day, how radiant she'd looked as she walked down the aisle. I remembered our first apartment, the late-night talks about our future, the silly inside jokes only we understood. Every single memory felt tainted now, poisoned by the knowledge that it hadn't been enough for her. When I finally made it home, the house felt different, cold and foreign, like it wasn't mine anymore. Her scent lingered on the throw blanket draped over the couch, on the pillow she used to prop behind her back. It was a cruel reminder of her presence and her betrayal. I tried to sleep, but my thoughts wouldn't let me. Questions swirled in my mind, each one more painful than the last. Was he better than me? Did he make her laugh the way I used to? Had she ever thought about me while she was with him? For the next few days, I went through the motions of life in a haze. Work was a blur, conversations with coworkers felt distant, like I was watching them through a fogged window. I avoided our mutual friends, not ready to face their questions or pity. Jennifer texted me constantly, her messages oscillating between apologies and pleas for forgiveness. Kevin, I'm so sorry. Please, let's talk. Can we work through this? I'll do whatever it takes. I still love you. Please don't give up on us. Each message was a dagger to the heart. Part of me wanted to respond, to demand answers or scream at her for the pain she'd caused. But another part of me knew it wouldn't change anything. No explanation could undo what she'd done. One night, I found myself scrolling through photos of us on my phone. There we were, smiling on a hike we'd taken last summer. Another picture showed us laughing at a friend's wedding, her hand resting on my chest as if I were her safe place. The betrayal felt even more surreal in the face of those memories. How could someone fake happiness so convincingly? I thought about calling my brother, Alex, or maybe my best friend, Paul. But the idea of saying the words out loud, "My wife cheated on me," felt too raw, too humiliating. So I bottled it up, keeping the storm inside me. Over time, the sadness morphed into something else. Resentment. I resented her for destroying my trust, for making me question everything I thought I knew about her, and about myself. I resented Mark, the faceless man who had inserted himself into my life and stolen the woman I thought was mine. And I resented myself for not seeing the signs sooner, for ignoring the red flags because I wanted so badly to believe in us. It wasn't just the betrayal that hurt. It was the lies she told to cover it up, the way she looked me in the eye and pretended everything was fine. It made me feel small, like I was stupid for believing in her. The worst part was the uncertainty about what came next. Could I ever trust her again? Did I even want to? And if I walked away, what would that mean for me? For my future? There were moments when I felt like I couldn't do it, like I couldn't move on from this. But there were also glimmers of clarity, brief moments when I realized that maybe her betrayal said more about her than it did about me. I wasn't the one who'd lied. I wasn't the one who'd broken vows. I wasn't the one who'd thrown away something precious. One night, as I stared at the ceiling, I made a promise to myself. No matter what happened next, I wouldn't let her actions define me. I wouldn't let this break me. But I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be more tears, more anger, more doubt. And at some point, there would have to be a decision, one that would determine whether I let Jennifer back into my life or close the door on us forever. For now, though, I was just trying to survive one day at a time. Deciding what to do next felt like standing at the edge of a cliff, staring into the unknown. Every option seemed heavy, every path riddled with uncertainty and pain. I knew I couldn't stay in limbo forever, but making a decision about Jennifer felt impossible. For the first week after the confrontation, I avoided her as much as I could. I stayed late at work, crashed on my brother Alex's couch a few nights, and made excuses to avoid being home. Jennifer kept texting and calling, her tone shifting from apologetic to desperate. She left notes around the house, on the fridge, on my pillow, even tucked into my car's sun visor. "I'm sorry I hurt you. I want to make this right. Please don't give up on us." Each note was like a stone in my pocket, weighing me down, but I wasn't ready to respond. I needed clarity first, space to figure out what I wanted. I scheduled an appointment with a therapist, something I'd never done before. Sitting in that small office, surrounded by potted plants and soft lighting, I poured out everything, the discovery, the confrontation, the swirling mess of anger and sadness that had consumed me. "Kevin," the therapist said after I'd finished, "it's normal to feel overwhelmed. Betrayal shakes the foundation of everything you believed about your relationship. But this decision isn't just about her. It's about you, what you need and what you deserve." Her words stuck with me. What did I need? What did I deserve? I started to think about what forgiveness would look like. Could I ever trust Jennifer again? Could I look at her without seeing the lies, the betrayal? And even if I could forgive her, would I ever truly feel secure in our marriage? Jennifer suggested marriage counseling, and though I was reluctant, I agreed to one session. The counselor asked us to share how we were feeling, and Jennifer launched into a tearful apology. "I made a mistake," she said, her voice shaking. "I got lost in my unhappiness, and I let it lead me to the worst decision of my life. I regret it every day, Kevin. I want to fix this. I want to fix us." Her words sounded sincere, but I couldn't tell if they were enough. When it was my turn to speak, I struggled to find the right words. "I don't know if I can do this," I admitted. "I loved you, Jennifer. I trusted you. And now, I don't even know who you are." She reached for my hand, her eyes pleading. "I'm still me. The woman who loves you. The woman who wants to spend her life with you. Please don't let this one mistake erase everything we've built." But it wasn't just one mistake. It was 6 months of lies, of betrayal, of choices that had torn our marriage apart. After the session, I realized something important. I wasn't responsible for Jennifer's actions, but I was responsible for my own happiness. Staying with her out of obligation or guilt would only prolong my pain. That weekend, I packed a bag and told her I needed space. "This doesn't mean I've decided anything yet," I said as she stood in the doorway, tears streaming down her face. "But I can't think clearly with you here. I need time to figure out what's best for me." Over the next few weeks, I stayed at a hotel and spent a lot of time reflecting. I thought about the good times we'd shared, the promises we'd made, and the future we'd once envisioned together. But I also thought about the lies, the second phone, the plane tickets to Cancun. In the end, I realized that rebuilding our marriage would require trust, something that had been shattered beyond repair. No amount of apologies or therapy could erase the pain or restore the sense of security I'd lost. When I returned home, Jennifer was waiting, hope flickering in her eyes. But as I sat her down, she seemed to understand before I even spoke. "I've made my decision," I said quietly, my voice steady. "I can't do this anymore, Jennifer. I can't be with someone I don't trust." Her face crumpled, and she began to sob. "Kevin, please. Don't throw this away. I'll do anything, to make it right." But I shook my head, tears welling up in my own eyes. "You already threw it away, Jennifer. I can't be the only one trying to hold this together. And honestly, I don't think I want to anymore." She begged, pleaded, even suggested we take more time apart instead of divorcing, but my mind was made up. "I deserve better," I said firmly, though my heart ached as I said it. "And you deserve to figure out what made you do this. But I can't be the one to help you anymore." Filing for divorce was painful, but it felt like the first step toward reclaiming my life. It's been 6 months since I left Jennifer. 6 months since I packed my bags, filed the papers, and closed the door on a chapter of my life I thought would last forever. The first few weeks after the divorce were the hardest. Everywhere I turned, there were reminders of her favorite mug on the shelf, the playlists we'd made together, even the way the house smelled when I came home. For a while, it felt like I was trapped in a loop, reliving the betrayal over and over again. But slowly, things began to change. I started focusing on myself, something I hadn't done in years. I threw myself into work, picked up running again, and even joined a local photography club. It wasn't easy. There were days when I didn't want to get out of bed, when the weight of everything felt too much to bear, but each small step forward made the next one a little easier. Friends and family became my lifeline. My brother Alex and his wife, Sarah, invited me over for dinner more times than I could count, making sure I wasn't alone with my thoughts for too long. My best friend Paul dragged me to the gym, claiming that endorphins would kick the sadness in the ass. And my mom called every few days, her steady voice reminding me that I was stronger than I felt. One day, I found myself sitting on a park bench, watching the world go by. A father was playing catch with his son. A couple strolled hand in hand, their laughter ringing through the crisp air. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel bitter or envious. I felt peaceful. I realized that Jennifer's betrayal didn't define me. It wasn't a reflection of my worth or my ability to love. It was her choice, her failure, and her loss. The experience taught me a lot about myself. It taught me that trust is fragile, that love is a choice you make every single day, and that sometimes, walking away is the bravest thing you can do. If I could give one piece of advice to anyone going through something similar, it would be this: take the time to heal. Don't rush to forgive or forget. Surround yourself with people who lift you up, and don't be afraid to ask for help. And most importantly, Remember that you deserve happiness, real happiness, not the kind you have to beg for or compromise to keep. As for Jennifer, I don't know where she is now, and I don't care to. The life we had together is a closed book, one I've tucked away on the shelf of my past. These days, I'm focused on writing a new story, one where I'm the main character, and the plot is filled with hope, growth, and the kind of love that starts from within. Leave a comment with your thoughts on the story. And subscribe to our channel so you don't miss new interesting stories. See you soon.